guys, this is Pastor Jim.
And this is Seth.
Welcome to Primary Camp Meeting. Dear Jesus, thank you for being my best friend, and I look forward to seeing and hugging you in person in the physical form very soon. Amen. Faith is going to teach us a recipe to make our very own sandwich.
When my hair is not in a braid, it comes an inch away from my knees. I like to have my hair grown out really long. I never have had it cut. It has like split ends, they're called, and I just get a little bit trimmed off. And lots of little girls at my church like my hair, like Grace, and she's growing her hair out. The reason I like it long is because I think it looks pretty, and it is a lot of work, but when you keep it nice, it looks very nice. Hi, my name is Faith, and I'm going to show you how to make eggless egg salad spread. Okay, I have to drain the tofu and then we have to mash it up. So you start by putting the knife here, but don't put your hand there, otherwise you could cut yourself, and that would not be good. So you just cut the plastic along the top and then along the side. And then you drain it into a sink. So you squeeze out the water. And now you take out your tofu. Start to mash it, and then you can just squeeze it like this and it comes apart. But you don't want any big chunks, you want to get it all small. And if you don't want to get your hands dirty, you can use a fork, but I don't mind doing it with my hands because I think it's kind of fun. And now you should rinse off your hands so you don't get your kitchen all dirty. We add 1 cup of mayo. And then scrape that out, because you don't want to leave a whole bunch in, otherwise you won't get the right amount, and then it won't taste right. We take 3 tablespoons of chicken style seasoning. Now we take 2 teaspoons of mustard. You don't have to put that in if you don't want to, but I think it makes it taste better. And now you should mix this up. And if you have stuff along the side, you want to be sure to get that. Why I like this recipe is because it's easy and it tastes really good and it's filling too. So, and it's healthy too. And now we're done. So it should look something like this. So spread it out on some bread. And you don't want to put too much on there, but maybe like that much. Should I say about the tomato slicer? And if you would like, you can put a tomato slice on top. But be careful not to get your fingers too close, because if you have it like that, then you'll cut your finger and that's not good. And so you continue to slice the tomato. And then, if you would like, you can put a tomato slice on top, and that makes it taste good too. But if you don't want to do that, if that's too hard for you, then it tastes really good just by itself too. And you can have it open-faced like this, or you can take another slice of bread and put some more of this. And then you can put that on top, like this. So either way works fine. And now we have our sandwich made. And the recipe is 16 ounces of firm water-packed tofu, 1 cup mayonnaise, 3 tablespoons chicken-style seasoning, 2 tablespoons of mustard. That's optional, but I like to use it. And then you drain and mash the tofu, add the rest of the ingredients, and mix it well. And then you can eat it with an apple. The reason I like to eat it like with an apple or another fruit is because God tells us to be healthy, and that makes us healthier to have like fruits and vegetables. It's very good.
Faith taught us how to make our own sandwich. Man, I'm hungry, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go make my very own sandwich. Hey guys, let's go see Marilee's museum.
more shells. You can see fish, you can see corals, you can see all the beautiful things that God created for you. Well, we gotta open the drawer. Should we open the drawer then? I'll show you. Okay. Because now we're gonna talk a little bit more about shells. I better open this now. Oops, I guess it opens pretty easy. Okay. Today we're just gonna talk a little bit more about more shells. So, we're gonna talk about types of shells and where they live. We talked a little bit about shells being everywhere yesterday. And the most colorful ones are found in the ocean, in the salt water, where the water's warm and there's lots of nutrients that help to make them beautiful. Shells basically are divided into two parts. There's parts that have one unit, it's like one piece is a shell, it's a gastropod. And then the other ones are bivalves, they're shells with two parts or two halves, two pieces. Like a bicycle has two wheels. Like bifocals that your granny wears has two parts, the top part and then kind of like the magnifying glass. Bi means two in Latin, and so there's one unit shells and two unit shells. You also are going to see some pictures of sizes of shells. Now shells lay eggs, and for the most part shells, when they lay eggs, they just spew out a mass of eggs and then they get fertilized by another shell and then they just float away. Just kind of like a frog or a fish or something like that. So there's lots of growth series of shells, and you will see some pictures of that growth series of the syrinx. That syrinx is from Western Australia. That's just an example of the largest of the gastropod, which means one unit shell, one big shell. Now they're found everywhere. They're found on the land, and they're found in the pond, and they're found in the ocean. And then the other kind of shells, the bivalves, the one that had the two parts, those shells are not found on land because it's kind of hard for them to get around because they have different ways to moving, and so they can't move on the land. So they're just found in the water. Now, in this table here that you see, these are all bivalves, and the colors are all natural. They're absolutely beautiful shells. Shells have different ways of moving, and most of these shells, when they move, they flap. They open just a little bit of way. They filter feed, they eat just the little nutrients, microscopic nutrients in the water. And then if they want to close, they close up quick, and then they flip with the water in there, they flip and they move from place to place. Now when you find them in the ocean, they're not this beautiful color. They're usually covered in kind of a grassy, mossy color. That's probably camouflage, but that also helps in their eating, because one thing draws another thing, and pretty soon there's a whole little ecosystem going on there. Now most of these shells here were harvested for food. It's hard to believe, but most places in the world, people eat shells. They eat lots of shells. In fact, if you go down to the grocery store right now, you'd probably find shells. You can go find shells at the grocery store and have them for supper. That's what some people do, you know. So a lot of these shells are harvested for food, and then they toss the shell away. And then people like me get to get them and clean them up, and they're absolutely beautiful. Here's another one. Have you ever heard of gooey ducks?
No.
Okay, that's in the Pacific Northwest. They eat them. That's the same. It's a relative
What
of.
do you mean? Oh, people eat these.
People eat them, so they go out. But you can harvest those because they're food. You know. So you dig down in the hole. They go out there with their spade at low tide or whatever, and they dig them. And they're called gooey duck clams, and they're just supposed to be just gourmet food.
Really?
Yeah. So anyway, that's how the life of the sea is. Most of it's harvested for food.
Yeah.
Shells are a living animal. The animal lives inside the shell, and the shell grows as the animal grows, and each time the animal decides to get a little bit bigger, he makes more shell. And so he keeps growing and growing and growing. As long as the animal is alive, his shell is maintained, just like we maintain our body. Shells are made of calcium carbonate, just like the bones in our body. And so the animal that lives in the shell takes care of his shell. If he gets damaged by rolling in the surf or something bites him or something like that, he'll do a repair on him, just like we can repair our bones when they break. This is an example of a volute that a friend made out of clay, showing the beautiful animal within the shell. This represents a growth series to one of the largest shells that is found in the world. This is a sample of this family. This is a syrinx, and it's from Australia. The largest one-unit shell in the world. Okay, this is an example of the largest gastropod in North America. I think the record is about over 2 feet.
How big is this one?
I don't know for sure. Tiny in comparison.
More than a foot.
It's an example of a bivalve with his valves open, and he's filtering out the nutrients in the water. The little circles that look like eyes around them are not actually eyes, but sensory perception, so that if he senses movement in the water that doesn't seem normal, he can close his shell up.
And
But
what's that on the back of his back?
Oh, that's another shell that's attached. Bivalves move by flapping their valves and moving from place to place. A lot of bivalves, when the egg is laid, it floats in the water as a veliger or as a baby shell, and then it floats to the bottom, and wherever it lands, it lives. So it will stay there its entire life. So remember to bloom where you're planted.
This is an example of the two shell.
Yes, there's a tridactyl. I should set this on top of this.
Okay, what are we looking at here, Marilee?
Okay. You see the top again is what is referred to as the Florida horse conch. Large example of the largest gastropod in Florida, state of Florida. It's a Florida state shell. The shell underneath it is a tridacna, or referred to as a man-eating clam, but obviously it can never eat a man. It can't even catch a man. Because if you would even put your hand in there, it moves so slowly that you would have to stand there for quite a while to get stuck. It has the animal that lives in there is extended beyond the shell and feeds. That's just an example of the largeness. The largest bivalve in the world.
And that looks like it's almost a yard wide.
Yeah, getting pretty
Not
close.
quite. And that one also is one that hinges, right?
Now, when you find them in the ocean, they're not this beautiful color. They're usually covered in kind of a grassy, mossy color. That's probably camouflage, but that also helps in their eating, because one thing draws another thing, and pretty soon there's a whole little ecosystem going on there. The reason the cowrie is shiny is because the animal that lives in the shell completely covers its shell with its mantle, or a thin layer of skin. Some of the layers of skin on some animals are more beautiful than the animal themselves. You can see all the projectiles that look there, probably as part of a defense mechanism for a predator. The mantle of a cypria, or a cowrie, that's a shiny shell, is very common and very desirable shell to collect.
Then you clean them up and they look
Yeah,
sweet.
like this. That's why they're shiny.
What is it?
Well,
Paper?
It's called a paper nautilus. And this animal only builds this chamber for his eggs. And he is a relative of the squid and octopus. It's all cephalopods.
Okay.
And so he lays his eggs in this chamber, and then he discards them when the eggs are laid.
That's,
hatched.
point to it again.
Okay, this is what this
Is it kind of like paper? I mean, does it
Well,
feel like
no,
paper?
it isn't. It's actually shell material.
But it's made, they
It's
make
made
it for the
just
eggs.
for the egg. It's made just as an egg case.
Wow. That's
Isn't that
pretty.
amazing?
Yeah, it's
It is
pretty.
amazing. In fact, I've given literally thousands of shells to the Smithsonian and Animal Museum. And, you know, I just can't eat all this stuff that I keep collecting. But anyway, this is a neat thing. This is a bill of a sawfish. I don't know if you know anything about sawfish, but if you can lift this thing, it's heavy. It's kind of heavy.
Oh, it is.
And that's a nose. Now, if you've ever seen
It's about the weight of concrete or a heavy oak.
If you've ever seen a picture of a sawfish, they're kind of a flat type of fish, and they're kind of gray, and they're kind of nondescript, and they just kind of lay around the bottom of the ocean, and nobody pays much attention to them. And so they get quite large. This has probably been a 20, 30 foot long fish, because, you know, if you have a nose this big, you got to have a body to hold it. So they lay around on the bottom of the ocean, and they move around. They're all in different oceans. And when they get hungry, they just kind of lift themselves up off the bottom of the ocean. And then they take their little nose, their big nose, and they just take that nose and they go, and all the little fish around them are either stunned or killed. And so then he opens his mouth and he just eats everything he likes around him. It's just smorgasbord. So all these fish are now floundering around, and they're bloody and they're whatever in the water, so that attracts more fish. So everywhere there's a sawfish that's in feeding, it becomes a feeding frenzy. So there's a good illustration about this. Here these fish are really not paying any attention to what's around them, all these little fish, and the sawfish is laying there, and they're just all swimming around and everything. And then pretty soon the sawfish decides it's time to eat. Now, you need to be aware of what's around you. Got an illustration?
Yeah.
Okay, choose your friends wisely,
Yeah.
but stay away from danger. Watch, be aware of what's around you. Wherever you are, be aware of your circumstances. Because if you were around a sawfish and he got hungry, you'd be in big trouble.
Definitely.
I got this from he was a Marine pilot. He was stationed on an island of Diego Garcia on the Philippines. Way out in the middle of nowhere. The U.S. government had a naval station there, and they had pilots there, and so he was out there. So he bought a lot of stuff from the natives and collected lots of shells. So this came from him. A lot of the corals that I have came from him, because when he moved from place to place as he got transferred, the government paid for his moving, so he got stuff moved all over the world as he moved all over the world. And he ended up right here in Minnesota and retired. As a pilot, actually, he was a pilot for Mayo. And he was an avid collector by this time. So we became friends.
Nice.
So anyway, this is called a pufferfish. And here again, this is a nice little fishy that swims along. But if it gets bothered by anybody or any other big fish comes along, he has it in him to put oxygen and put more air into his fish, into his body, and he gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so then the fish know, because these things are just like cactus. They're just sharp. They're sharp. But he has a little bit of a disadvantage in the fact that when he gets that big, see his little fins? His little fins? They're pretty tiny. And so he's at the mercy of the waves in the water. So anyway, he can just, because now he's full of air, so he's going to float to the surface. So the poor little fish, the little puffer fish, sometimes ends up on the top of the water where he really belongs down underneath the water. So if I ever see a puffer fish, sometimes I like to play with him a little bit and let him puff up, but then I always take him back down and put him under a little piece of rock or coral or something so that they can deflate and be safe. But they're one of God's amazing creatures.
Yeah, neat.
Mm-hmm.
And then what is that? Is that a sea turtle shell?
That's a sea turtle shell, and that shell came from one of the islands in the Caribbean where they had a turtle farm. And I have a little baby turtle from that same farm. Oh, here it is. Here's a little baby sea turtle that came from that turtle farm. Family of epitoniums. This is just,
Inside out.
they're just amazing little family. That's Epitonium scalari. That's as big as, these are the biggest Epitoniums ever. But anyway, they're just tiny little shells, and you have to really study to tell the differences of the species. But it's a challenge. And the more I collect shells, the more I like the little ones. You know? So anyway, it's just kind of interesting. This is a family that I've always been interested in collecting, and the more I study it, the more confused I get, only in heaven.
Interesting.
So, anyway. We've looked at some of the bigger shells in the growth series. We've talked about the fact that they're egg layers and they grow and they continue to grow. But some shells don't get very big. There are shells that are only sizes that can be seen by a microscope. Now, I'm not into that type of micro mollusk, as people call them, but there are beauties to be seen in looking for the little things. And you know, the Bible says a lot about the importance of little things, and I think it's really important to not overlook little things. And so I've just showed you some examples of small shells that I think are really quite unique, and I hope you can enjoy looking at the little things.
Do you have anything on Madagascar?
I've got a whole pile of Madagascar shells.
That would be cool.
I'll tell you, Madagascar has, let me go to Madagascar. I think I got them all. Yeah, but I just thought this was so neat. I mean, here comes this box with big shells in. So I've kept them. I'm not going to separate them. I want to keep them as Madagascar.
So these are all from Madagascar.
This is all Madagascar. What I was impressed with is the vibrant color.
Yeah.
It's the nutrients around the water that makes the color.
Well, there's several places in Madagascar. It's like Oklahoma, so it's darker. When it rains, I literally thought they were butchering a cow because it just looks blood red, and it's thick blood red clay. And I think that's quite
That's
partly
why
they
it sure is, because the shells are feeding on the nutrients that are in the water, that whatever. But they're gorgeous. They're gorgeous.
Yeah,
So they're a smart smell.
that's fun.
Anyway.
I have a really small one of these at the house.
Yeah, that's mitra.
Hold it up so we can
Mitra. See, this is another mitra, and these are one's mitra, one's mitra paleus.
So these are all from Madagascar.
This is all Madagascar. We had these friends that had that school out there, you know.
Yeah, I do know.
And so anyway, they knew I liked shells, so they sent me this whole pile of shells. I was like, really? And I was just shocked. I was just shocked at the color, the
Yeah,
vibrant colors,
beautiful
because they
color.
just went down to the market and bought. I said, "Where'd you get these shells?" I said, "At the market."
I have those. They dug them up for us while we were snorkeling.
Yeah,
They
These
was
harpus?
those two right there. They went out. They had a diver go out and get those.
These
for
two, the
us.
harpus?
Yes.
You're kidding.
no.
Oh
And
my.
they had big ones too.
Yeah, I was gonna say my harps are down there, but there's, you know, I mean, it just.
Yeah, once they
those
realized we were
Landis
looking at
are
shells, they
Oh
put
yeah,
the
then they
boat
bring
out
them
and
all
started
to you. Yeah.
diving, and they put them
yeah.
in a plastic bag with sand
they
and
smell
shined them
them.
up, and
Yeah,
yeah.
but I just can't get over the color. Now this is styratus. Now this is a deadly poison.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, kids. This one will kill you right away, apparently.
And textilis right there.
This one as well. But this one will kill you
Yeah, it will.
immediately.
Textilis pretty deadly.
So, if you're feeling weakness for shellfish, don't eat these two.
It's not the food part of it. It's just the picking it up.
Oh, just touching them?
Well, if they've got a harpoon in them, you know. A cone shell has a harpoon.
So if they stick you with it,
Yeah, it's not the food. It's not the food. It's the animal that has a harpoon.
Oh, we gotta clarify that. So these two creatures can poke you and kill you. So consider that when you're walking around in the ocean.
Know before you go.
Know before you go. But they got unique patterns to them, don't they? Very unique.
Also, the telltale on that is the aperture. The aperture usually on the more poisonous ones is more
This part?
the opening. This is a
Okay.
little bigger. But anyway, they're taking and studying cone venom, and they're using it medicinally for people for pain control.
Sure.
And the more they study, they're realizing that different shells have different types of venom. That some are, lethal, like right now, and some of them are like anesthetized.
Sure.
And there were 3, I can't remember. Anyway, I said this whole, these people that are shelling, if you go to a shell convention, it's pretty deep. They show all these the harpoons and then all the scientific, how they've gone and studied this thing and how they've been put it in, reaction to people. And so they're learning that, some of it is just kind of like put you to sleep or whatever, or just in different levels of pain, the different toxins in these shells.
Is this one safe?
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, you know before you go.
I don't know nothing.
And the thing of it is, when I can remember one of the first times we were diving in Hawaii, and the guy says, "Now be careful of those poison conefish." Well, I knew what he was talking about, but I said, "You mean
These?
styratus?"
Is this what he's talking about?
Yeah, he's styratus. And I said, "Yeah, I know." But I picked them up, but I usually carry, if I'm in an area where there's cones, especially if there's a lot of Textilis is a fairly common cone. I carry a little jar with me in my bag.
So you don't sit on them.
Well, put the poisonous ones in the jar.
So you would just pick it up away from the animal.
Yeah. I mean, the
Put it
odds
in
of
your
it
jar.
happening. The odds of it happening are pretty rare. This shell looks a lot like it. It's got tents on it. Tent. They call them tent shells. But anyway.
What do you mean by tents?
Wait,
Well,
Jen,
they look like little tents. They look like little
okay,
tents.
so
They're
this one is called that. Okay.
So Conus Gloria Maris has the same little kind of markings on it. So he picks it up thinking it's the Gloria Maris, but not realizing it was not the right shell. And so he put it in his pocket and it killed him.
Oh.
And so, the moral of the story is you don't mess around, with things that you don't know. You choose your friends wisely. You know about, there's all kinds of stories.
Object lessons.
Object lessons in nature,
So these that are really poisonous, is that something that you find walking on the beach, or is that something you had to dive for?
You would, if on a low tide, if you went out and tipped rocks, they live under rocks in the sand, you'd have to swoosh around. The odds of finding one alive on the beach would be pretty slim, but you could. I'm not saying you couldn't, but the odds wouldn't be with you. Probably be dead, But there's nothing around in North America like that. I mean, there's a few cones in North America, but cones, prettier cones come from,
Exotic places.
exotic places, warm tropical waters. I'm just amazed at the color. I mean, that shall be pure white. You know what I'm saying? And look at that color in there. And this is the depth of the color. I just think, I'm just amazed at the Madagascar shells. The colors are so vibrant. So a lot of these shells are harvested for food, and then they toss the shell away. And then people like me get to get them and clean them up, and they're absolutely beautiful. I think when God created the world, that a lot of these shells were laying around in this beautiful color. I think a lot of the colors that you see today were probably more vibrant when God created them. I just can't imagine a God that would create all this stuff for us to enjoy. He's saying, come and learn of me. That's what God told Job. He said, go down to the ocean and see. Go look around and see the beautiful things that I've made for you. And so I want you to do that. I want you to have that experience of someday, even if it's the pond, even if it's a river, but go and look around and see all the beautiful things that God's made for you.
Thank you, Marilee, for the education on sea life and especially shells. And Marilee's an expert on that. I think you figured that out by now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Natanya is a pretty girl, around the age of 3 or 4. As a little missionary, she sometimes had to carry her own rolling suitcase and purse, but it never made her terse. She often let others go first. With friends and family, she kept pace with a smile upon her face. From America to France, she did not get there by chance. Then on to Madagascar. She could not get there by a car. It was just too far. One day, Natanya had heat rash. It was hard to fall asleep fast. So her friend told her a story of places she had taken a nap while traveling the world map. You slept in a plane. You slept in a train. You slept in a boat on the Indian Ocean afloat. You slept in a boat while crossing a moat. You slept in a zoo where there were no kangaroo. You slept in a taxi when the weather was nasty. You slept in a hut made of ravanella leaves cut. You slept in a house as quiet as a mouse. You slept in a crowd where everyone was loud. You slept at a wedding without even fretting. You slept in mosquito netting and without any bedding. You slept in a bus without ever a fuss. You slept in a canoe. What else did you do?
No, I didn't sleep in a canoe, but I did sleep in a bungaloo.
Natanya squealed and wiggled, and everyone giggled. No, her friend smiled. You did not sleep in a bungaloo, but you slept in the bungalow. This I do know. No matter what we do or wherever we may go, you have slept and have seldom wept. I imagine if you laid down your head, you could even sleep in a bed. The name of the poem is I Slept in Madagascar by Melissa Martin.
Hey, it's time for Peg Doll's Bible Biography with Pastor Ken.
Hi there, this is Pastor Ken with another story about Elijah. And this time we're reading from 2 Kings chapter 2 from the New American Standard Bible. And it came about when Yahweh was about to take up Elijah by a whirlwind to heaven, that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, please, for the Yahweh has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elisha said, "As Yahweh lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." And so they went on down to Bethel. And then the sons of the prophets who were at Bethel came out to Elisha, and they said to him, "Do you know that Yahweh will take away your master from over you today?" And he said, "Yes, I know. Be still." And Elijah said to him, "Elisha, please stay here, for Yahweh has sent me to Jericho." But he said, "As Yahweh lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." And so they came to Jericho. And the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho approached Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that Yahweh will take away your master from over you today?" And he answered, "Yes, I know. Be still." And then Elijah said to him, "Please, stay here, for Yahweh has sent me to the Jordan." And he said, "As Yahweh lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." And so the two of them went on. Now 50 men of the sons of the prophets went and stood opposite them at a distance, while the two of them stood by the Jordan. Elijah took his mantle and folded it together and struck the waters. And they were divided here and there, so that the two of them crossed over on dry ground. And when they had crossed over, Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask what I shall do for you before I am taken from you." And Elisha said, "Please, let a double portion of your spirit be upon me." And he said, "You have asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if you see me when I am taken from you, it shall be so for you. But if not, it shall not be so." And as they were going along and talking, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, which separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind to heaven. Elisha saw it, and he cried out, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." And he saw Elijah no more. And then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them in two pieces. And he also took up the mantle of Elijah that fell from him and returned and stood by the bank of the Jordan. So Elijah went to heaven in a whirlwind. And Elijah represents all those who will be alive to see Jesus come, who will also be caught up to meet the Lord in the air. Don't you want to be a part of those people who are caught up to heaven like Elijah was? God bless you.
Well, guys, I guess it's time for our last recap. And things that kids can do, we can make our own sandwiches and learn to be a little bit more independent. In Marilee's museum, we learned about a bunch of different things. I like to call them bits, bobs, and bivalves. Try to say that 5 times fast. Man, that Madagascar trip sure sounds like an adventure. I bet I would be tired too. But think about all the things we could see. In the Pegdal Bible biographies, Elijah was taken on a fiery chariot to heaven. Man, I really want a fiery chariot. Maybe when we all get brought to heaven, I could have one too. Well, guys, I guess that's all of camp meeting. I guess this was our last episode and recap. Maybe next year we can meet in person and we could say hi to all of our friends. I'm so glad that we were all able to learn about Jesus together. So I guess it's time to say goodbye. We love you, and I'll see you soon in heaven.